Hey everyone. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about here are the class objectives. Now I know you're saying, I've read the syllabus. Yes, you have. But in this class, I've cooked everything down to 14 things that you need to get out of this class. And if you get these 14 things, I feel like I've accomplished something. And if you get those 14 things and understand them, you're going to move forward with better writing. Very dramatic. Okay, now these 14 things are located in the Creative Writing Handbook. That's going to be posted on the home page. It's a huge document, and I'll talk about in there about how to download that and look at that so you can follow along. But it's going to be a page that looks like this. Notice I'm referring to it as notes. Here it comes. 14 things. You can't see it because it's probably too dark, but there are the 14 things. That's what it looks like. It says how to lay the foundation for better writing. We're coming back into the light. Okay, you ready? Now, we may have to break this up into 2 segments of videos because 14 things, that's 1 thing a minute. I've already wasted a minute. We're going to see how this goes. Item number 1, be concrete, not abstract. Now, every creative writing teacher across the nation drives this one home. You probably heard this in Comp 1. If you've taken Comp 2, you probably heard it there. You probably heard this a million times. But what does it really mean? To be concrete and not abstract. Abstraction. Love. We talk about this. Love is an abstract concept, and it's a little problematic at times. We have these poems. You've seen them. If you want, go out on the internet. There's a million of them out there. Love is the vastness of the sky. Love is the shadow in your eye. Love is the emptiness in my heart. Love is when you fill it with a tart. That's actually a little too good. Not with a tart. But you understand what I'm saying? Love. That's not love. To be concrete, I'll tell you exactly what love is. Are you ready? Are you holding your breath? Love is 2 people sitting on the love seat with a bucket of fried chicken between them as they share a bag of Cheetos and lick the cheese, and that's a little gross, isn't it, off of each other's fingers while they're sharing a can of Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. That's love. Now I know you're saying, really? Yes. Here's the thing. At the end of the semester, if I gave a semester test, which I'm not, don't panic, but if I did, and I asked you at the end, what is love? You'd remember that. Why? Why? Because it's concrete. The more concrete you are, the more memorable your writing is going to be. So as you go along with your writing, and I've given you 2 standing assignments, it's typed in there. I looked at a random computer somewhere. It's right over there. You need to read and you need to write. Read anything you can get your hands on, and I'll suggest things, and guess what? That Creative Writing Handbook that's posted there, mega file, has many, many things for you to read. 2, to write. You need to be writing all the time. It's a constant thing. It's like exercise. I don't know what that was, but you understand. It's exercise. You have to keep writing, okay? Now, concrete versus abstract. You don't want to be abstract and talk about all this fluffy stuff out in the world. You want to be concrete, okay? That means imagery. We're coming to that. Bam. You ready? Number 2, be specific, not vague. Now, more often than not, we want to try to be vague. Now, you say, but Joey, I want this to be a one-size-fits-all. I want everyone to understand. This is a Captain Kirk gesture, by the way. Thank you for the 2 people that laugh that understand Captain Kirk. I want everyone to relate to my writing, so I must be vague. No, don't be vague. Do not be vague. Be specific. Here's why. When you're vague, you end up writing what I call and others call sort of a greeting card verse in poetry, or something that is just sitting out here. People go, oh yeah. When we talk about greeting card verse, and you understand what I'm talking about, it's like, Mother, the dearest woman to my heart, you warmed my life in the beginning, you warmed my life today, happy Mother's Day, whatever. It's a one-size-fits-all. Because greeting cards don't sell that say, Mother, who woke me up somewhere in the morning and said, get the heck out of the house, there's a fire in the kitchen. And when you run out and look, here's the skillet with a big grease fire because Mom had put bacon on the fry and then went to put her makeup on. And then she's beating the grease with a rag while your brother is trying to dump flour on it. Happy Mother's Day. You don't see those cards. Why? Because that would be my card. Don't ask. It's a long story, but we were safe. So, the more specific you are about things, ultimately the more universal you're going to be. Now I know you say that's a contradiction. It's a contradiction, Joey. And it kind of is. But we all relate to the specific. You see my mom now suddenly beating that frying pan. Why? Because I was specific. You see it, you sense it. But if I just said, my mother who loved me woke me up one day and saved me. What? I don't get it. No, there was bacon burning, grease fire. Scary. That's important and it's specific. So the more specific you are in your writing, the better that writing is going to be. We need to move on. We'll clarify if you have questions. Think small. Capture the universal through the specific. What do I mean by that? More often than not, we want to try to reach out to this universal meaning. Because we have this need, this deep, crazy need to share these bits of wisdom. Notice I bowed up wisdom. What we don't always understand is that the only way to get to that wisdom is to think in small bites. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Thank you, I knew you would know it. Now, the whole idea of thinking small, and I'm even going to give you something, because a few of you right now are sitting around going, holy smokes, I need to write something and I have nothing to write. What am I going to do? When you think small, here's the thing you need to do. All of you have a junk drawer, or a junk box, or a place where you put all your stuff. And you know the stuff I'm talking about, that stuff you keep, and you wonder every now and again, why do I keep all this stuff from high school, from grade school, from somewhere back in the day, and it's little trinkets and it's little things and all that. All of that is thinking small. All of those objects carry meaning. All of those objects are something for you to write about. That deck of cards that you kept in that drawer or in that box that you used to play rummy with your grandmother when you were 7 years old, that's important. That's thinking small. That object right there is something to write about, and it's incredibly important. You can't talk about the love of grandmother. I love my grandmother and my grandmother loves me. Even though I did love my grandmother. But, when you think back to those specific instances, here we are playing a game of rummy, and we have the cards and they're worn, because she held them and she loved them and she loved you. That's the small stuff, the important stuff. You got to find an angle and a way into the writing. You got to think small. You can't go off to this universal greater meaning and impart wisdom without going into detail and thinking small. I've rambled enough about that. Let's move on. Use imagery to appeal to the senses. Metaphor, simile, comparison. Imagery is our stuff. We as writers, we have imagery. That's what we have. We have to describe things. We have to appeal to the senses. All the 5 senses. Smell, that was exciting, wasn't it? Taste, touch, sight, hearing. Did I leave anything out? I don't think so. We're good. You have to appeal to these things. If you don't, you're depriving the reader of that sensory input. Okay? So, when you think then in terms of metaphor, simile, quick quiz, what's the difference between metaphor and simile? That is correct. Simile uses like or as, metaphor does not. My mother is like a gorilla. Sorry, Mom. My mother is a gorilla. My mother is like a gorilla, simile. My mother is a gorilla, metaphor. She's not really, but it's okay. She's not watching this video, you are. So, I often, in any class, like to refer to one of my favorite examples. It's hidden in the handbook. Go check it out. Jean-Paul Sartre, who uses the example. Now, and before I get to the example, you could describe a man's deformed hand in a whole paragraph. His hand was twisted and contorted. His hand was moist, and his hand had flaking skin and all this stuff. Blah, blah, blah. What he does is he nails it in one specific image. He had a hand like a fat maggot. Now I know you're looking around the room right now and you're like, oh, that is terrible. You probably called family members in and backed this video up and said, listen to this. He had a hand like a fat maggot. You can see it. It's and moist and nasty and gross, and it is. Why? Because you're going to remember that image. Later on, you're going to be running, you're going to say, look at the hand like a fat maggot. And you see it's writhing, it's nasty, it's white and moist and ooky. I know it's disgusting. But that's the whole point. The point is to find the right image to be memorable and convey meaning. Okay? See, I told you I'm going to be a little wacky, moist and nasty, but it's very serious. Convey meaning and make it memorable. Guess what? That's one of the items coming up. Let's move on. Now the next thing you're going to see, and I'll read it to you, use strong words, rhythmic sounds, there's a dash, taste the words, stretch the words and sounds until they break. That's a quote. And the algebra that I use, and if I had a whiteboard behind me, I'd write this on here, but you're looking at the page. Good words plus good sounds equal memorable writing. Create music. What does all that gibberish mean? You have to pay attention to the right words and pick the right words, because that's what we have, ladies and gentlemen, words. Those are our tools. We have to select the right words, and we always have to pay attention to sound. Now that's for poetry, for prose, for essays, any writing at all. It doesn't matter. You have to pay attention to sound, to the rhythmic quality, to the pacing. And we'll talk about these things as we go along throughout the next few weeks. But you have to understand that it has to sound good and appeal to the ear, the inner ear, that thing that appeals to us. Some of you have posted what you have said are good poems, and I agree. We have things like "We Real Cool." We real cool, we shoot pool, we then and you can hear that and you can feel it. That's important. And Still I Rise, Maya Angelou. And we talked about the Ben Harper song that goes along with that. Again, how does that translate so well into song? It sounds so good. It's delicious. I was about to quote the poet. We'll talk about that poetry. So cold. It was the Plums, by the way. The bottom line there is pay attention to the words and to sound. You must have a strong title, first line or sentence or paragraph in the case of prose, and last line or sentence paragraph in the case of prose. Now I haven't moved. Let's do this. Okay. Now, do you like that? It's good. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about that. Now, many of you, maybe not many, you three over there, are going to say, but I don't like to title my work. Well, if you do not title your work, number one, it's going to be titled as untitled, or it's going to be titled as the first line if it's a poem. So, you have to title your work. You have to have a strong first line. This is an editorial stance because editors, they read the first line and you got to get them. This is the same way for readers. Readers need to be appealed to. You got to grab them at the first line, and at the end you got to finish strong. I tell you what, we're going to pause right here because guess what? My 15 minutes of fame are up. But guess what? I got another 15 minutes and here they come. Bam.